Good afternoon, citizens of Alberta and esteemed guests. My name is Sarah Black, and I have the honor of serving as your Alberta Territorial Chief Minister, leading the progressive vision of the Alberta Territorial Red Democratic Government. Today I stand before you to address a critical juncture for our province, our nation, and the broader Canadian identity. The recent escalation of hostility by the United States government under President Donald Trump, most notably the threat of a 100% tariff on Canadian goods, demands a unified and resolute response. Our government stands firmly in defense of Alberta's sovereignty, economic independence, and the principle that Canada must no longer be held hostage to the whims of a foreign regime that treats us as a second-tier nation. The U.S. tariff threat, a rejection of Canadian autonomy. For over a year, since President Trump's re-election in January 2025, the United States has pursued an increasingly aggressive trade strategy toward Canada. The most recent provocation, a demand that Prime Minister Mark Carney's federal Liberal government abandon all trade deals with China, or face crippling 100% tariffs, exposes the Trump administration's disdain for Canada's right to self-determination. This is not policy, it is bullying. By labeling Canada the 51st state, and even threatening military overtures toward Greenland, President Trump has made it clear that the U.S. views its northern neighbor as a dependent entity, not a sovereign partner. Our Alberta Territorial Red Democratic Government categorically rejects this narrative. Canada has thrived for over 150 years not by pandering to the United States, but by asserting our independence, diversifying our partnerships, and leveraging our natural and human resources. In recent months, Prime Minister Carney's federal government has forged a bold agreement to import Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, into Canada. While our government supports this initiative as a strategic move to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy and reduce reliance on fossil fuels, we remain deeply concerned about its economic implications for Alberta. The EV deal, as currently structured, offers little in the way of job creation, local manufacturing investment, or support for transitioning workers in Alberta's traditional energy sectors. Since President Donald J. Trump's re-election in January 2025, the United States' relationship with its long-standing northern neighbor Canada has descended into a crisis marked by escalating economic coercion, rhetorical incitement, and a dangerous erosion of diplomatic norms. At the heart of this escalating confrontation lies a brazen ultimatum issued by the Trump administration: Canada must sever all trade agreements with China within 90 days, or face the imposition of 100% tariffs on its exports to the United States. This ultimatum, framed as a protectionist safeguard by U.S. officials, represents not a policy of national self-interest, but a calculated power play to subordinate Canada's independent foreign and economic decisions. By branding Prime Minister Mark Carney's federal Liberal government as uncooperative and labeling Canada the 51st state, a term dripping with irony and condescension, the Trump administration has laid bare its disdain for Canada's right to self-determination. This is not merely a trade dispute, it is an assault on the principles of sovereign equality and multilateral diplomacy that have long underpinned North American stability. The U.S.-Canada relationship has always been a paradox. While the two nations share the world's longest undefended border and a deep-rooted cultural and economic interdependence, their bilateral ties have often been strained by clashing priorities and divergent approaches to global governance. The 2018 renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, under the Trump administration marked a turning point as the U.S. We propose a federal-provincial partnership to establish EV assembly plants in Alberta, retrain oil and gas workers for green technologies, and create tax incentives for Canadian automakers. Independence is not just political, it is economic. We will not allow Canadian consumers to be priced out by foreign imports while Alberta's workers are left behind. Alberta's path to trade independence and economic resilience. As a province, Alberta has long played a pivotal role in Canada's prosperity. However, our history of resource dependency on the United States has left us vulnerable to external shocks. Even before the Trump administration's recent provocations, our government recognized the imperative to diversify our trade partnerships. In the coming months, Alberta will pursue bilateral trade agreements with countries that respect our sovereignty and share our vision of equitable global cooperation. This includes deepening ties with Mexico, expanding agricultural and energy agreements with Gulf states like Qatar, and exploring emerging markets in the global south. The world is changing, and Canada must change with it. Alberta will lead this transition by establishing itself as a hub for innovation, clean energy, and ethical trade. The recent rhetoric from President Trump, most notably his claim that Canada lives because of the United States, is not only offensive but demonstrably false. Canada's sovereignty, cultural identity, and economic resilience have always been rooted in the strength of its people, not the goodwill of a foreign power. The notion that Canada's existence is contingent on U.S. protection is a relic of the past, and one that Albertans will not tolerate. For over a year, since President Trump's re-election in January 2025, the United States has pursued an increasingly aggressive trade strategy toward Canada. The most recent provocation, a demand that Prime Minister Mark Carney's federal Liberal government abandon all trade deals with China, or face crippling 100% tariffs, exposes the Trump administration's disdain for Canada's right to self-determination. This is not policy, it is bullying. By labeling Canada the 51st state, and even threatening military overtures toward Greenland, President Trump has made it clear that the U.S. views its northern neighbor as a dependent entity, not a sovereign partner. Our Alberta Territorial Red Democratic government categorically rejects this narrative. Canada has thrived for over 150 years not by pandering to the United States, but by asserting our independence, diversifying our partnerships, and leveraging our natural and human resources. The proposed tariffs are not just an economic weapon, they are a political statement that the U.S. seeks to dictate Canada's foreign policy. We will not comply. In recent months, Prime Minister Carney's federal government has forged a bold agreement to import Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, into Canada. While our government supports this initiative as a strategic move to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy and reduce reliance on fossil fuels, we remain deeply concerned about its economic implications for Alberta. The EV deal, as currently structured, offers little in the way of job creation, local manufacturing investment, or support for transitioning workers in Alberta's traditional energy sectors. To this end, the Alberta Territorial Red Democratic government urges the federal government to negotiate supplementary agreements that center on domestic production. Good afternoon, fellow Albertans. My name is Sarah Black, and I have the honor of serving you as the Alberta Territorial Chief Minister. It is a privilege to address you on this bright Wednesday, January 28, 2026, at a moment when our province stands poised on the threshold of a new chapter in democratic representation. Over the next several minutes, I will outline a pivotal development that our government is about to set in motion, a development that will reshape the very contours of our legislature, broaden the voice of every Albertan, and ensure that the institutions of our democracy keep pace with the evolving needs of the communities we serve. I speak, of course, about Bill C-94, the Red Democratic government's definitive proposal to expand the number of electoral ridings across Alberta for the forthcoming general election on May 5, 2027. Alberta has always been a province defined by its diversity. From the bustling streets of Edmonton and Calgary to the sweeping prairies of the south, and the rugged expanses of northern Alberta, each region contributes a distinct thread to the fabric of our shared identity. Yet, as our population has grown and shifted over the past decade, the arrangement of our electoral districts has become increasingly misaligned with the lived realities of Albertans. The current Legislative Assembly comprises 90 seats, a number that was appropriate when the last major redistribution took place 15 years ago. Since then, the province's total population has risen by more than 1 million residents, with substantial growth concentrated in urban centers and in the northern resource corridors. Moreover, demographic trends, such as the rise of younger families in suburban Edmonton, the resurgence of Indigenous communities in the north, and the emergence of new technology hubs in Calgary, have created pockets of representation that are now stretched thin. When a riding covers too many constituents, the elected member of the Legislative Assembly, MLA, faces an impossible balancing act, attempting to be present, responsive, and accountable to a population whose concerns are increasingly heterogeneous. This diminishes the quality of representation and erodes public confidence. The remedy is straightforward and democratic: increase the number of ridings, thereby reducing the average number of constituents per MLA and allowing for a more intimate, effective relationship between elected officials and the people they serve. Bill C-94 is the legislative instrument through which we will enact this expansion. Its principal components are as follows. For ridings in Edmonton, these will be delineated to reflect the city's north-south growth corridor, the revitalized River Valley neighborhoods, and the burgeoning East Side communities that have seen a 15% population increase since 2020. For ridings in Calgary designed to capture the city's expanding southwest suburbs, the historic southeast districts, the central business core, and the fast-developing northwest region, home to a growing technology sector. 2 ridings in rural northern Alberta, one will serve the Peace River and surrounding agricultural lands, the other will encompass the Fort McMurray-Fort McKay area, where Indigenous communities and resource-based economies intersect. The Legislative Assembly will increase from 90 to 100 seats. This 10-seat augmentation directly corresponds to the 10 new ridings, ensuring each new district enjoys equal standing with the existing ones. The bill provides a clear timetable. The new ridings will be officially recognized and their boundaries ratified by June 30, 2026, giving political parties, candidates, and electoral officials sufficient lead time to prepare for the May 5, 2027 election. No interim by-election will be triggered. The current MLAs will serve out their terms until the general election.